Good morning. Don't you wish every morning started off with like conversation and donuts and kind of casual? That would be great, wouldn't it? Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to visit with you today, and I commend you all for giving up some of your own time to work on your own professional development. You know, we're going to talk a lot about social media today, and I can tell you that probably just about everyone in the room is an expert, at least for their company or their organization, or is trying to be. So we're not here to have all the answers. We're just really here to have an open dialogue, and we hopefully this will be a very participatory process. But let's face it, with the election recently, the rules of social media have changed a lot. Just this week alone, we've seen Facebook talking about, how are they going to monitor either, fake news sites or real news sites. So there are a lot of blurry lines and a lot of opportunity for individuals and brands to make some mistakes, right? So to get us started, I thought it might be interesting, and this is just a popcorn exercise. So anyone just raise your hand. There's no right or wrong answer here. I want you to think about what was the most outrageous social media post you've seen this week? Just anybody. What was just something like you thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe I saw that. I can't believe they said that. Real quick, come on, I know you've seen them. Anybody? Can you say that a little bit louder, one more time?
So I saw a post that compared that said if you listen to rap music, you can't criticize Donald Trump, and it made me delete Facebook.
Okay, all right. Facebook's all gone. All right. Anyone else? Outrageous, crazy post. Yes?
I saw, it looked like a picture of a television screen with an airplane that said Donald Trump is already deporting Hispanics.
Got it.
And it made it look like it was a real news story.
We're seeing a lot of that in our feeds, aren't we? Okay. Yes?
I saw a couple have like a relationship spat on their status. So like, okay, popcorn.
It's kind of surprising, isn't it? I guess I have a teenager, so I actually got to watch a text breakup, makeup, I love you, no I don't kind of conversation the other day, and I thought, wow, times are changed. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the casualties of social media. And the best way to do that is probably to give you just a little bit of context about who we are as individuals. So I'm going to start off, and then Alex is going to share a little bit with you. So I was born and raised here in Oklahoma City. I've been here over 50 years, and this is me at Coronado Heights Elementary School. And I was one of those kids that was fortunate enough to go all the way through Putnam City Schools and live in the same house all my life. And had pretty much, well, the idyllic Leave It to Beaver childhood. Went on to OU and have a journalism degree. I don't have a public relations degree, which is kind of interesting, but I do have a journalism degree, and then a graduate degree in human relations, which is also very helpful when dealing with human behavior. So I will tell you that for the better part of the last 30 years, I did everything from worked as a television news anchor and a reporter in the Tulsa market for about a decade. Seems I kind of have decades of experiences, a chunk there. And then I worked for Oklahoma State University as Director of External Affairs, and also for another PR firm here before I moved to Oklahoma City. So fast forward, this is obviously a picture of the Candor team about a year ago. Unfortunately, Alex is not in this photo. And I asked him, I said, don't we need a photo of you, Alex? And he's like, no, I'll just be there in person. So he's going to tell you about it. But this is a picture of Candor last year when we came in second at the Metro 50 Awards. And that was just a real honor for us. We've only been in business just at 3 years. And it's been an interesting climb. And it's tough. I won't lie to you. We have a variety of clients. And I've been in the reputation business for a long time. And clients don't always take your counsel, especially when it comes to online posts, right? We do our very best to give them not only counsel through a PR reputation filter, but also through a social media filter. And so that's why I wanted Alex to present with me today, because, honestly, he drives social media for our company, and there are many, many times where I may have some ideas about how we respond to posts, but Alex is always so helpful in all the other stuff that I won't even pretend to honestly understand. So tell us a little bit about
The reason I'm not in this picture is because I was in this building a year ago, so a lot of people in this room probably already know me. I was a big wing starting in 2013, and then I moved over to Candor in March. And a big wing I did SEO, I did social media, I did content marketing, and now I'm doing a little bit of everything at Candor. So that was me. This is her. These are 7 social media personalities that you should never adopt. The reason we're going to go into 7 social media personalities is because this is about how to avoid becoming a casualty of social media wars. And we think the easiest way to avoid becoming a casualty is to avoid the war altogether. So never adopt these personalities.
And I would say, when people always ask, how do I keep from becoming a casualty? And I just go back to, like I said, good old-fashioned manners, the way I was raised. We all know what politically correct behavior is, right? I mean, you always have kind of that gut feeling when you might be posting something that's not, might not sit well with others. So I think it's really important that you listen to that inside voice. I remember when I hired Alex, and there were several people that applied for his position, and I asked the question, I said, if you were in charge of social media for a client, do you think social media is a technical skill, or do you think it's an intuitive skill? And 4 out of the 5 candidates immediately said, technical. Social media is it's all technical. Alex was the only person that said, and he said it quickly, he goes, oh, it's intuitive. You absolutely have to intuitively know how to navigate the waters. And so, again, a lot of what we're going to share with you today with these personality traits, there are some best practices, but there's also a lot of intuition.
Absolutely. So go ahead and get into the first one. We only want feel-good stories. So as a social media specialist, and I'm sure there's plenty of social media specialists in this room, you've probably dealt with clients who only want the bright stuff. They don't want to see any sort of criticism at all. It's bad because you aren't acknowledging the negativity, and if you aren't acknowledging it, then it's like you aren't receiving any, and then basically your customers or your audience becomes kind of skeptical. I think it's terrible for 2 reasons. One, we always tell our clients to keep their reviews active and embrace the hate, embrace the criticism. If you're not embracing the criticism, one, you don't know what's wrong with your business. Not every business is perfect, and you're not implementing the changes that you need if you're not embracing the criticism. Also, if you're just getting away with any of the people that are actually criticizing you, if you're not acknowledging them, then you're not turning them back into brand advocates. So.
And I would say this is the hardest thing for a CEO or top line manager to understand, right? Because let's face it, you may understand this is a best practice, but then trying to coach your client or coach your teammate or coworker about why it's important to be authentic and have an authentic voice online, that's a little more challenging. So it's just always a coaching opportunity. I would encourage you, when you see an individual or a brand responding to a negative post, it'd be great, take a screenshot of that and create a little file for yourself. And eventually these are tools that you can share with other people when you're training them, why it is important to respond to some negative feedback. We had a client a couple of weeks ago, a large company who was launching a new construction project, and they posted online about this new construction project. And unfortunately, some of the employees there weren't real happy about it because they've not received raises in a couple of years. So you can imagine when suddenly your own employees are saying something negative on your company's social media pages, you get that knock on the door, and it's either your manager or the HR director or someone saying, hey, take that post down. We don't like it.
Absolutely. And that leads us into the second personality, which is really 1A and 1B. We put 1 and 2. But just take the post down, it's like it never happened. So this is essentially that first personality, except even more of a dictator. So why this is bad? Your post was only live for a few minutes. It doesn't matter. Somebody probably took a screenshot of it because your content lives forever. So what we like to do is we always coach our clients to say, no matter what, if there's criticism on your page or if you messed up, you have to immediately apologize. Don't just hide it under the rug, basically.
Absolutely.
So.
All right. So I want to use an example of exactly what Alex just said that goes way, way back. This is from 1982, and this is a case study that's used in a lot of journalism classes. I've used it in media training for years, and it's the Tylenol case. Some of you aren't old enough in this room to remember this, but what happened is there were some Tylenol bottles around the country that had been, someone had put some cyanide there, and 5 or 6 people, I think, eventually died from taking the tainted Tylenol. So the company had to make a quick decision. What do we do in this crisis, right? And this is before the internet. So the only way we heard about this was either on the evening news or our morning paper, right? So they had a little more time to respond. And in a move that surprised a lot of people, Tylenol as a corporation made the decision to take every single bottle of Tylenol off the shelf around the country. Can you imagine what a heavy lift that was? And also, can you imagine the conversation in the boardroom when, you've got shareholders and others who, know the stock prices are going to tumble from this action, and people really freaked out about it. But Tylenol at the end of the day said, we're going to do this because it's the right thing to do. Right, it's the right thing to do. So they did. Now fast forward about 6 months later, because Tylenol took those actions and protected the safety and the well-being of all Americans at that time, their stock actually skyrocketed. They made more money that year than they had in like the previous 4 or 5 years. People went crazy buying Tylenol as a thank you to the company for doing the right thing. So that was in 1982. You fast forward to social media, it's not that much different.
Absolutely. We brought this up because it was a way a company actually did personality number 2, and they did it well, but it was before social media. Can you imagine what Tylenol would have done today? Would they have gone dark on all of their social media channels when this happened? Something that happened earlier this year with Chipotle, we saw that they went through an E. coli scandal, so something kind of similar. And they made the news that they said on February 8th, we are going to shut our doors down. We are going to go live with a branding conference, basically, to try to figure out how we're going to move forward and make our company better and make it more healthy, and go through all these different regulations. Well, eventually, they said, okay, well, actually, we're only going to shut down half the day on February 8th. We'll open our doors at 3 p.m. So a couple things that they did well, they ended up trending for the right topics. They were no longer trending for the E. coli. They were trending because they were, hey, we're going to make our brand better and we're trying to really help you guys. They kind of fell short a little bit by not being dark all day, I don't think. I think they would have held a much more of an impactful response from the audience had they actually gone dark the entire day instead of going, oh, we're going to live tweet a couple of tweets from this conference and then we're going to go at 3 p.m. like nothing ever happened. And then they were right there with the free burrito coupon, which just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But they've seen a big hit in revenue in the last year just from that scandal. So.
All right, the next trend, and we hear this a lot. Oh, gosh, we're just going to jump on every new trend that we can. We want to be part of the party. It's funny. I was looking through my feed this morning, and y'all know the mannequin challenge, right? And I saw actually my daughter's high school basketball team had done a really cute little video. But we're at the time where if I had a client approach me today and say, hey, we want to do something with the mannequin challenge, I would more than likely say, too late. It's already out there, it's run its course. So you have to be really careful about timing, right, whenever you jump on a challenge like this.
Absolutely. Another example was Pokemon Go when it went crazy. The city of Oklahoma City actually jumped on it really quickly. I think it was a day or two after the initial craze. They made that short little video that said, if you're playing Pokemon Go in the city of Oklahoma City, be mindful of where you're walking and don't trample on the myriad gardens. So I think that
was a positive example.
Yeah, absolutely, a positive example. A negative example would be somebody today, a marketing agency, releasing a 10 reasons why Pokemon Go should affect your marketing. It's way after the course. You probably all remember the Harlem Shake. Everything that you do, unless you're doing the 10x content, as the kids like to call it, should probably wait if you're more than a week or two after.
And I would, something else we've seen in these situations, and this will come up again, is that so a company has the idea to jump on a craze like this, but then they have to get approval. They have to get approval from a manager, and then they have to get approval from legal, and then they have to get approval from whomever. And by the time they get around to doing it, there's 3 other new trends that have occurred. And so this is very common, and that's where, in your positions, you can really push back and tell them why that's just not appropriate.
Right.
You want to talk to us about DiGiorno's?
Absolutely. So we're not just talking about trends like the Harlem Shake and Pokemon Go and the Mannequin Challenge. We're talking about trending hashtags. So a lot of you might be familiar with this. DiGiorno's back in, I think it was 2012. I actually remember when it was, but 2014, because it was the Ray Rice scandal. 2014, they tweeted, "Why I stayed, you had pizza." The hashtag "Why I stayed" is of course associated with domestic abuse awareness. So back in 2014, you might remember the Ray Rice scandal with Baltimore Ravens. He got in trouble for punching his girlfriend out in the elevator, and he is yet to return to the NFL because it was such a big deal. DiGiorno saw the "Why I Stayed" trending hashtag on the left side of their Twitter page, and they decided, let's sell some pizza with it, without ever clicking on it. They were immediately sorry. 4 minutes after the original tweet, 1 million apologies, did not read what the hashtag was about before posting. This is just another reason to always click on that hashtag and find out why it's trending before you try to sell your business. And they were like really, really, really sorry. You can see that the DiGiorno Pizza social media specialist went in and replied to every single person that had mentioned them. That was probably a really long night, a really long couple days for DiGiorno Pizza. The problem is they still have a delivery problem, and that is one of many puns that I probably tried to throw in here that didn't land. You can see that in their responses, if you can see, they said that this was a rare mistake in a lot of their responses. So they're basically telling their audience, we're really sorry this happened, but hey, we've been perfect otherwise. You don't want to do that. You want to admit defeat sometimes. You want to humanize your brand.
And I would say just through strict PR reputation filter, one of the things we would coach a client to do is, if you have to say you're sorry, is to reach out to every single person and make that apology. So part of me looks at this and says, you know, once they made the mistake, they did the right thing by contacting everyone. But also when they did that, they also, you know, obviously have a full, like, I mean, this is saved forever in, you know, somewhere. I don't know where all these things go. They're there. I mean, obviously screenshots and everything. So it's an interesting kind of twist that we have today between basic PR practices and how you have to use some different skills on social. So.
Sure. So they admitted defeat, kind of. They were really sorry. There was still a little bit of unrest in it. That leads us into the next one. We've never been wrong about anything, ever. You probably have a lot of clients that like to think that. So you have to admit defeat sometimes and acknowledge that you're a human with emotions. Your audience, you want to stand next to them and treat them like human beings instead of looking down on them.
And I would say we saw this a lot recently in all the state questions. I don't know if you all followed all the state questions. A lot of them had, you know, websites and Facebook pages. And I thought it was really interesting that if someone had a particular question about, you know, how policy would change, that there were some of the state questions that were very active about answering and being responsive, and there were others that they just went dark. And so that nonverbal also almost leads to this idea of, well, I've shared the information with you and it's accurate. Why should I have to even respond to you? It's a very egotistical way of looking at things, and even by your non-answer, you are sharing this type of personality trait.
Sure. And if you're just doing daily management, just know that nobody really wants to associate with a know-it-all, pseudo-omniscient megalomaniac unless you're running for president. So please, please, please think about a hashtag's consequences before you brand it as your own. This is just like you can admit defeat if your campaign is not going as well. You also need to think before you actually start that campaign and admit it when your hashtags or your other parts of your campaign are not going well. We have wrangled up some bad hashtag examples. First one is McDonald's McD stories. Back in 2012, McDonald's asked their customers to share a positive experience about McDonald's with the brand, whether that was how they like their food, how they like the restaurant, what have you. Unfortunately, what could possibly go wrong? Everybody loves McDonald's. No, everybody hates McDonald's. They got a lot of backlash. They said, oh, your food is terrible, your food makes me sick, please stop popping up in my neighborhood, you have so many restaurants, go somewhere else. As a terrible example, they should have thought that through. They had good intentions because they wanted probably better brand awareness, they wanted some testimonials, they wanted something that they could share with their audience. It just kind of fell through. Yeah. Second one, Not Guilty. Intamins, which is a baked goods company, used Not Guilty to promote their low-calorie food options. Normally, that would be kind of a cute hashtag to promote low-calorie food options, but unfortunately, just like DiGiorno's, they used it when it was already trending, and this was in the wake of the Casey Anthony trial. So they were trying to sell their baked goods by using a Casey Anthony hashtag. Not good. Receiving
Should have
backlash.
been not smart hashtag.
Absolutely. Yeah. This last one, you might remember Susan Boyle from America's Got Talent. She had an album release party in 2012. Somebody on their PR staff thought it would be a good idea to hashtag it with Susan Album Party to try to drive audience. Unfortunately, when they did it, I wrote it like this so you can read it that way. It was all lowercase when they did it. So you're reading left to right. That's Sue's Anal Bum Party. So.
Okay, that one went way over my head the first time I saw it. I said, spell that out for me again.
So they received some backlash. They received some invitations to a way different party. Nobody really wanted to go to that party, maybe. So just always think through your hashtags before you start using them.
And so now we want to share one case, one example with you from a client that I think really did work well. So, you know, the whole idea of a hashtag is you want something that's buzzworthy, right? You want people sharing comments and you want people talking about it. And so this time about a year ago, we were working with the Oklahoma Safety Council. And they wanted to promote the fact that texting and driving would soon be illegal. But we also knew that the Department of Transportation would be saying that. We knew that law enforcement would be educating people. And we were so afraid that their voice would just get lost in all that noise. So we took the Candor team. We always bring everyone around the table and we do a quick 15-minute brainstorm. And we came up with a hashtag that was a little edgy, a little controversial, but we weren't quite sure if the executive director would go for it or not. But the one we came up with was practice safe text. Say it again. Practice safe text. Okay, anyway, you have to see it. It worked well. It received over 40 media hits from around the country. It became the top story on several local news stations. And we had an executive director who was willing to be a little different. So there are times when you can have a little edgy hashtag that works, but you definitely have to sit around with the right people that know nothing about your brand, and ask them to shoot arrows through it first. Because I don't think I would have ever have seen this unless Alex spelled it out for me. So sometimes it takes other people looking at it through a different filter.
Absolutely. So it's always great to be edgy and throw a little humor in there, but that leads us into this one. No, seriously, everyone thinks I'm funny. I probably am a victim of this because I like to instill a little bit of humor into all of my social media campaigns, which means I'm probably not funny. Why this is bad, you're actually not funny probably. Your sense of humor might not connect with your audience, and your social channel shouldn't be treated like an open mic night. The bottom line is you have to know your audience. One thing that I think is really great about humor in social media campaigns is it not only humanizes your brand, but it draws to that emotional appeal. It makes your content more shareable. People are more likely to share your content if they are connecting with it on an emotional, humorous level. One national brand that does this really well is Old Spice. Even if you don't think Old Spice is funny, they really go after it for the humor. Whether that's social media, commercials, videos, what have you, they're always in on it. And they do it without being offensive, which is great. One national example of a brand that does it while being offensive is IHOP. So this is back when IHOP was trying to promote their pancake stack. You can see it says flat but has a great personality. No, sorry, IHOP, your sexist jokes aren't funny at all.
Yeah. Wow. And we gave a similar presentation earlier this week, and someone raised their hand at this point and said, they asked the question, which we knew we were going to get, which was, well, now with President-elect Trump saying all kinds of things on Twitter, is this going to be acceptable in the future? I mean, are we so desensitized to all of this that we're not going to start pushing back and saying this is not appropriate? I don't have all the answers. I'm just raising it as a question for everyone to think about. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in our Q&A.
Sure.
So.
You want to talk about this one?
Yes, this was a PR professional. Justine Sacco, I believe is how she pronounced her name. A couple years ago, she was going to Africa on a company trip. And as a PR professional, you think she would know better, right? But going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS. Just kidding, I'm white. So those are those jaw-dropping tweets that you see and you think, really just say that. She lost her job, as she should have, over this comment. And which leads us perfectly into our next social media personality that we need to avoid is...
Not racist, but. So it does not matter what your intentions are. It does not matter if you did not intend to hurt anybody, just like Justine. You're already wrong, you're already a racist, your brand is associated with that. See you later, you should be fired. Nobody should be an advocate of your brand. It's terrible. So this social media personality applies to several different situations, and one of the national examples that we wanted to show was Total Beauty. You can see it here. So Total Beauty, which is it's a big beauty company, we had no idea Oprah was tatted, and we love it. So this is a picture of Whoopi Goldberg from the Oscars that they tweeted out about Oprah. I'm sure Total Beauty had the best intentions with this. I'm sure that they legitimately maybe thought this was Oprah. I'm sorry, but you're perpetuating the stereotype that all African Americans look alike, and you are racist, and nobody should follow you anymore, but they still have over 350,000 followers. So.
Well, and there was an example just this week. I'm trying to remember where the mayor was from. Did you all see that? Where
West Virginia. First
ladies were having tea at the White House, and she said something about, she referred to Michelle Obama as an ape. Her post was up for not very long. Someone got a screenshot of it. Of course, she took the post down, and fortunately, yes, she lost her job over that. That was just recent. And so, these are basic principles of how you treat people in life. And isn't it amazing that we still stumble and fall all the time? And so many times people respond, well, I didn't know, I was just trying to be funny, or it's amazing to me that in this day and age that we don't have a better way of communicating with our friends and our colleagues. And so the good news is it keeps us in business because the phone rings and we get to help people, but come on, this stuff is crazy.
It's seriously sad. Just keep on research. That and know your audience are probably the two biggest takeaways from this entire thing. Social media, while it is intuitive and while there is a science, on the surface it's really, really easy. Know your audience and know your voice and do things that aren't going to put you in hot water like this. We actually have a personal example of I'm not racist, but from one of our former clients.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So, we're going to talk about Nonnas because Avis, I don't think, would care. She's no longer in business, and I've heard her share this story with others. This happened several years ago. Our phone rang, and y'all remember Nonnas in Bricktown, of course. So an incident happened there, and this is about perception, not about reality. It's about perception. And there was an African-American couple who were there about 10 o'clock at night, and they asked to be seated, and they were told they would have to wait 30 minutes for their table. There was someone else leaving at that time that overheard that conversation. They went and wrote a scathing letter about how Nonnas was discriminating against its customers and asked everyone, it's hard to see here on this screen here, but they asked everyone to share this post. And overnight it had over 300 shares, tons of comments. We got the call, and the first thing we said was, have you called this individual to talk to them? Find out what is their version of this story, and let's at least get some facts out. So within about an hour, we were able to direct message this individual, put them in touch with Avis, who was able to talk them down from their perception of what they thought had occurred. And this was really heartbreaking to her for lots of reasons, and it is for lots of business owners. She had a lot invested in her brand. She had worked for years in this community to elevate awareness about diversity and other issues. And for her, that is not the way she ran her business. What actually happened was they closed the bar down at 10 every night, and they actually have to, or the restaurant at 10, and they have to move people from there down to the bar if you want to get a meal after 10 o'clock. And that couple just happened to arrive at the shift change. Anyone that arrived at that time would have had to wait. But that was not the other person's perception. So suddenly, they're citizen journalists, and they create their own version of the story. At that point in time, Nonnas did not have an active social audience, and honestly, there's a lot of older school business owners, I put myself in that category, who don't always understand why they need to know what people are saying about them. This stuff is so scary to them. They just want to forget. They don't want to believe that it's there, right? They just want to ignore it. And what we told her was it's really important that even if you don't engage, you listen and you know what people are saying so that when these types of situations occur, you can handle it quickly. But unfortunately, a little bit of the damage was already done.
So this kind of leads into our next one. I was hacked? I don't really know if I was. We've seen this time and time again. People who are crying wolf, oh, I'm sorry for that post, I was hacked. You actually don't really know if they were hacked. Go through their Twitter feed or their news feed on Facebook to find out if they've been posting things that are at least similar to this, then use your own awareness. But if you actually have been hacked, then there are a couple things you need to do. You need to beef up your security. You need to apologize immediately, and then you just go in to recovery mode, basically. Yeah. This national example of U.S. Airways, you guys might remember this. This is probably the biggest Twitter hack blunder of all time. You can see that there was a customer who complained. We don't really know where she was. She may have been on the tarmac. She may have been after the flight. We welcome feedback, L. If your travel is complete, you can detail it here for review and follow-up. Then they tweeted a super pornographic image. Nobody knows if an employee did that, if they actually did get hacked, if there was a hacker, thanks for being positive in the beginning and then actually trying to help, and then hey, pornographic image. Also, I really didn't mean any sexual innuendo by the title, so I apologize for that. So we apologize for inappropriate image recently shared as a link in one of our responses. We've removed the tweet and are investigating. The problem with this, thanks for apologizing, they left this up for an hour. They didn't see it for the first hour that the super pornographic image was live. People were commenting on this and saying, I really want to retweet this, but I don't want to retweet this because of the pornographic image. I don't want people to actually see that I'm retweeting something like this. So huge blunder.
And I would even say that hour window of time where they didn't respond, we don't really know what was going on behind the scenes. Maybe they didn't see it, maybe they did. In my experience, that's when all the lawyers gather around the table and everyone has to decide on what we're going to say legally, because this says, lawsuit. And so, the court of public opinion and the court of legal opinion aren't always on the same page. And in the time that you have to wrestle with the lawyers to try to figure out what your official statement is, a lot of damage can be done in that time period. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already had these conversations with either your employer or whoever you represent and do social for, that you have the authority to respond. In this case, they might not have had the perfect legal response, but they could have said, holy cow, so sorry about that. We don't know what happened, took the photo down. We did we're doing the right thing, taking the photo down. I mean, that's not really going to get you in a lot of legal hot trouble, and it's going to buy you a little more time then to come back and say what the other things are that you want to say, if anything. So I'm a big advocate of becoming friends with the attorneys and educating them and coaching them on why we have to have the authority to respond in these situations.
Sure. And the moral of this story was U.S. Airways actually ended up merging with American Airlines. And now if you go to the U.S. Airways Twitter handle, you can see that it's still live, but the account is protected and they're not offering any new followers. But if you tweet at them, American Airlines will get it back to you directly. So I guess if you tweet out a super pornographic image, just merge with an even bigger company and take over all of their social. It's tough. It's a tough world.
It is, and every day I appreciate Alex because you need someone within your organization that stays on top of things. We want to know when the algorithms change. We want to know when the rules change. I mean, just this week, like at 9 o'clock in the morning, I get an email from Alex that said, I just noticed 5 minutes ago, Facebook changed all its icons, and it's an art. It's a science, it's a skill. Social media shouldn't go to the intern or the youngest person in the room just because they understand technology. I think we really need to elevate the profession in a way where people understand that it requires strategy and thought and intuition and all those other things that go into your online voice. So We're going to open it up for questions
Absolutely.
Now. This is really an open dialogue. Observations, Tabby?
I'm kind of surprised we weren't used as an example of this because I work for Visit Oklahoma City, and so I'll kind of tell you the story of what happened and then question of what happened after the fact. We had gone to a conference where we met with Visit Oakland, and they were like, let's do a fun, back and forth banter between the Warriors and the Thunder. And this is before Kevin Durant had been gone over there and everything like that. It was the playoffs, and so we agreed to it. It was a little bit off of our normal tone and voice, but we thought, we'll have a little bit of fun with this. We actually had a lot of fun with it. The first night we were trending, we did a really good, conversation. The second game, one of our team members put out a tweet, and we had gone through, we had a plan, we knew what we were going to put out there. We had bet wine versus steak in Oklahoma City and stuff, and so it was a lot of fun stuff, a lot of the gifts that you see on Twitter. Second night didn't go well when a photo we put out had a picture of Steph Curry that said, I'm sorry, what was her name? Something like that. And it was feminists from all over were attacking us. And after, everybody was loving everything else. So that didn't go well. We did a lot of apologizing, we're sorry, this is not what we intended. The next day in the office, our boss deleted everything. So from the moment it was really good to when it got really bad. From a social media team, how do you think that we educate our superior in saying that's probably not the best way to handle this situation? We handled it from an apologetic situation, and moving forward, we learned from that. We're not going to have that banter with Oakland anymore. But how do we have that conversation with our superiors that that's not the right way to handle the situation?
That's tough. It really is. It's about talking about transparency and what is really important in today's world. I'm going to guess, or let me just ask this question, was the manager who made this decision someone who actively participates in social media?
No.
That's part of the issue right there.
He oversees it.
Right, not understanding the consequences,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that's where we have to find a way to bridge examples that might have happened in their world and space and time and compare it to the digital world, because we're still dealing with managers and other people in positions of authority who aren't active users. And I don't have a magic wand, Tabby. I wish that I did, but by taking the post down, it's almost like you're ducking and hiding. And it's much better to just accept responsibility. And it was a great campaign. I remember when all of that happened and the whole controversy around it, and How you handle yourself, grace under fire also says a lot about your reputation and your brand. So I think it's also good to have outside sources that you can call, because sometimes, let's face it, you can say these things over and over and over and over again to your manager. But when someone on the outside looking in is kind of pegged as an expert, and they come in and say the exact same thing, sometimes that helps. So you should think about that in the future. If this should happen to me, what's my game plan? And again, I know I'm rambling here. One last thing, the more you can get case studies of these examples, stick it in a digital folder, or maybe for them you have to print it off, put it in a old-fashioned folder and lay it on their desk and show them whenever times are good. Don't wait until you have a crisis. You have any thoughts on that, Alex?
You hit the nail on the head
Okay.
on basically everything. It could have been a lot worse. It could have been Shop Edmund. So.
You were talking about earlier that you want to try to avoid these situations ideally before they happen. What advice do you have for marketing agencies that onboard clients, and branding is a big part of what you do? How do you incorporate this into the branding when you're onboarding, and what kind of strategic approach or the best approach would you recommend?
Sure. For me personally, whenever we onboard a new client and I'm going to meet with them for the first time, we talk about exactly what they want to get out of a social strategy. We talk about what their voice probably is and how I can help them. We talk about what they want to stay away from and what they want to post mostly, and then I educate them on what maybe might be best for what channels. I think as long as you do that little branding guide at the beginning, everything that comes after that is pretty easy. You don't really get into this hot water. That's why you want to avoid these personalities, so you can avoid becoming a social or casualty of social media war. Unfortunately, you see sometimes with clients who really like that power and they want to go in and they want to post something on their own channels for their own behalf, and you kind of have to educate them. Sorry, I'm handling everything over here. Please let me know if you're going to do that and run it by me first so I can read the copy and see if that's something that we actually really want to promote or not. I've run into that several times.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest misnomer a lot of them have is understanding what it means when you say social media voice. Especially if there's multiple people posting on their accounts and trying to convince them that you do have a social personality. Then the other thing I would say for those of you who onboard, even hire people through your HR department, if you haven't done this already, is even talking to your HR director about how important during the onboarding process when you bring a new employee in, to letting them understand that company or organization's social voice, right? So many companies don't do that. But in the past, we would get the old employee handbook and have all kinds of rules in there. There's probably, years ago we used to talk about having a social media policy, and hopefully all of you have that now. But it's not just that. It's also what are kind of the cultural norms of this organization and how we post or when we post or who can post and who might not post within the organization. You can't just assume that they know that. And that's everyone from, the intern or the person right out of college to, someone that's been there for years. I think it's healthy to have those conversations on a regular, maybe even an annual basis.
What are some tips? My name is Riley with Downtown OKC, and on our social media, we have a pretty big voice here in the city. And sometimes we struggle with posting about social issues or stuff that's going on. So what are some tips you give to your clients about when to engage, even if it's not related to you, but that you feel like you should express an opinion or something?
You want to take that?
Yeah. Well, hi Riley, nice to meet you. I know several people in your shop. So, big question that came up a lot the last few months, with employees of certain organizations posting their political beliefs, oftentimes issues. So there are really two questions here. One is, what if I'm an organization and I have employees saying things on their social channels that I perceive as being ridiculous or contrary to the cultural norms of my company? How do I handle that? That's one thing. But what I hear you say is, if Downtown OKC wants to say something about the environment, let's say, how far can they go without being perceived as being, either far, far left or far, far right? And I just think that's a gut check. I think you have to ask yourself, again, can we embrace a topic that's not going to be divisive? Can we go there? And if you can't, then don't do it. Don't fight it. Go somewhere else. Sorry, that's about all the counsel I have on that one. It's tough. It's topic by topic. You have to really think
Absolutely.
it through.
I would reiterate that, say it's a total gut check, and if you do want to post something, just know that you're willing to lose some audience, if there is an audience out there. If you wanted to be left and you don't care if you lose that alt-right audience, like, go ahead and do it. That's your brand. It is, at the end of the day, just a gut check, though. If you want to keep it all central, probably avoid any of that.
I have one example I just thought of. So we do some work for the Dallas Morning News on their brand. And I guess it's been almost 2 months ago, Dallas Morning News, for the first time in its history, endorsed a Democratic nominee for president. They endorsed Hillary. And when they did that, it was at a great loss to their revenue stream. They lost over $1 million in subscriptions overnight, right, by doing that. And since then, they've posted a couple of other things. I don't think they saw that coming. I don't know. I think that there were a lot of those types of editorials that we saw the last few weeks. And so yes, there are ramifications from wrapping your brand around a particular ideology or philosophy. And you have to be willing to take the hit. It might be financial, it might be reputation, it might be personal, but you have to be willing to take the hit.
I'm curious about one that's sort of become local legend, I think, in the last year, and that is hashtag Shop Edmund. I'm curious, even if you are the client and you believe that you have a valid point, or that you're trying to communicate something that you believe in or that you care about, when's the appropriate time to put your tail between your legs and fail?
Yeah,
Something that's clearly spiraled out of control.
We'll let Alex say that one.
Shop Edmund kind of falls into that we've never been wrong about anything ever
You want
category.
to just tell, if the whole group doesn't know, you want to set it up.
Sure. Shop Edmund, back in early August, Edmund Active promoted this picture that said, please don't use hashtag Shop Edmund. We have trademarked it, basically. I think the end goal, they didn't want their the businesses that they were competing against to use it because this is something that they have been using. Unfortunately, for the rest of us, it became the best Twitter day ever. So everyone started using hashtag Shop Edmund. Like, sorry, you can't trademark hashtag. Like, what is that? What's that intellectual property? You can't do that. So we had a heyday with it, and Shop Edmund and Edmund Active actually, I think they waited until the next day to issue any sort of apology, kind of, but they still didn't really own up to it. They did a story with News OK where she was trying to explain herself, like, hey, we just didn't want our the competitors to use this. Like, we don't care if other people use this, but the tone that she used was still super oh, I'm right about this. Like, just apologize immediately. Like, sorry, you can't trademark a hashtag.
Yeah, that was a toughie. For lots of reasons, and I think it's really interesting. I believe that they probably had good intentions, and I believe that they thought that they were doing the right thing to represent their client the right way. But then again, when you immediately get shot down like that, it should be pretty obvious fairly quickly that you've made a blunder, and you just need to admit so. People are much more forgiving of us if we just come clean than if we don't. They've done reputation studies for years and years and years and years. And, when you lie or cheat or duck and hide, our opinions of those individuals tend to change. But if you just say, I messed up, I'm human, and you know what, I'm going to try to do better, people are really forgiving of that. And they end up trusting you in the long haul. Jennifer.
Like not saying but after you're sorry.
Absolutely.
Because the people that have said, I'm sorry, but, and then make some sort of excuse, like it's a rare mistake, or this is, this is why we did it, it just seems like just keep it simple.
Good point.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
It's hard. I have a hard time saying I'm sorry. That's a hard thing to do because you feel so vulnerable when you do it. And then when you put it online, you're vulnerable to the whole world, right? So I get why that's hard to do. There's another hand somewhere. Yes.
So, a lot of your examples are from Twitter, which, it's easy to find those examples. Some of the harder, with the increase of micro videos, Snapchats, Instagram videos, and whatever else micro video sites are going to pop up. Did all these guidelines and principles apply? Are there other kind of things to consider with videos and short videos and such?
I think they apply to everything. I don't think it's just social media. I think it's the way that you associate your brand with anything. I think these rules probably apply. It's a little bit harder with Snapchat, obviously, because a lot of people aren't seeing that every day, and it's here and then it's gone. People can still take a screenshot of it, though. It'll still live forever. So.
Yeah, and I think video is one of those things too, that once you put video out there, video without context is sometimes hard to interpret. And also video can easily be sliced and diced in different ways. So I do think that when you use video, which is a great storytelling tool, we all should be using video every day. I'm an older news reporter, so I love video. But I think that you have to set that video up appropriately, and I think there's a little bit of danger when you get into some of these, formats like you mentioned, like Snapchat and others. It just, it's just hard, and it's complicated. So, I don't know. I mean, I agree with you, and at the same time, I don't, so.
Fair enough.
I don't know if I would use video on those channels, is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, it's where social media is going. We are going to micro video, so it's like,
Right.
if you did this presentation in a year or 2 years, I think all of it would be about video.
Yes, it would be.
Snafus from that.
For sure.
Yes.
I'm going to do one more just because I can. I've been really curious about how Samsung has been handling their Note 7 stuff this year. I feel like in 5 or 10 years, that's going to be the Tylenol case that we're telling people about in our college classes. As someone who had a Note 7 and had to go through all of that and is now entrenched back in Apple, I'm curious how you guys felt that was handled, because it seemed like they were on the right track at first, and then it sort of pivoted and went very badly when the recall didn't do anything. I'm just curious what you would have done differently.
I'll just say I think attorneys got involved. That's all I'm saying. Go ahead.
I wish I could speak on this more. Unfortunately, I don't really know how Samsung handled that on social media. I didn't
really see a lot, Eric, I didn't see a lot on social. My, what I remember about it is, I flew recently, and the first thing they asked me was if I had one, because I was going to blow up the plane. So it's like, whoa, that was really my introduction to it. So I'm not familiar with. What's your impression of how they handled it?
Well, from being someone who was involved in it and got out fairly early, it was just very interesting to see, because they got a lot of praise for issuing a recall after a couple of weeks, but it was a voluntary recall. It was, hey, if you're worried about this, bring it back in. There just wasn't a lot of ecosystem behind it. You don't typically buy something directly from Samsung like you would from Apple, so you buy it from Best Buy, and your contract is through Verizon, and it goes to Samsung. So there were all these corporate partners that were not on the same page. I remember calling Samsung the morning the recall was issued, and the people I talked to didn't know anything about it. And they said, oh no, it's fine. If your phone feels warm, call us again. It's fine. And then they said, hey, we found the battery issue. Everybody bring them back. If you wait 2 weeks, please don't buy an iPhone. We're going to send you a new Note 7 that works great. And then they did that, and then those burned up. Yeah. And so it just feels like one of those Tylenol things where if you had just said, we don't have a clue what's going on, and it's not important about being right or wrong, let's just be safe. Come back to us, come back next year. You wouldn't have every airline in America telling you not to have a Note 7 every time you get on a plane.
I would say to that, I'm going to guess that around the corporate table, you probably had a CEO, a COO, chief legal counsel, but I bet there wasn't a chief communication officer at that level. And let's face it, in reputation management, you have to have someone at the executive level constantly training the other members about why it would have been important to have made that decision. Here's what's going to happen if we don't. Many, many times that voice is not at the executive level of decision making, and I think the more and more we're dealing with these types of crises, that hopefully the business world's going to wake up and realize that's a mindset and a value that they need. Because I would bet you there was no PR voice at the table making those decisions. Or if they were minimized. They were minimized. Oh, just go write that news release. Or just, we'll tell you what to do.
I wondered a little, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to start a conversation in a room full of people. I guess I am. I wondered a little bit how culture plays into that, knowing that that's a company that's in a very different part of the world and how they might handle crisis or shame or embarrassment differently than maybe we would here.
Excellent point.
That could probably get complicated. Good talk.
Yeah.
But
All right.
if you do have more questions, I'm sure that Karen and Alex will still stick around. It's about after 10. Thank you so much for being here. That was a really interesting, awesome presentation. I really appreciate it.